Have you ever looked up at the moon and wondered if there's more to it than meets the eye? What if I told you that our closest celestial neighbor might not be what we think it is at all? What if the moon isn't just a natural satellite, but something far more extraordinary? Something that could completely rewrite everything we know about our solar system and our place in the universe? Tonight, we're diving into one of the most mind-bending theories ever proposed about Earth's moon. We're talking about evidence that suggests our lunar companion might actually be an artificial construct, a massive spaceship that's been orbiting our planet for millions of years. And before you click away thinking this is just another wild conspiracy theory, I need you to stick around because the evidence we're about to explore comes from NASA's own data, respected scientists, and observations that mainstream astronomy still can't fully explain. My name is Alex, and I've spent the last 8 months researching this topic, analyzing hundreds of scientific papers, NASA mission reports, and testimonies from astronauts themselves. What I discovered will challenge everything you thought you knew about the moon. We're going to examine seismic data that defies all logic, explore density measurements that don't add up, and look at structural anomalies that have baffled scientists for decades. But here's what makes this investigation so compelling. We're not just talking about fringe theories anymore. We're looking at hard scientific data that suggests the moon might be hollow, artificially constructed, and possibly even inhabited. The implications are staggering, and by the end of this video series, you'll understand why some of the world's most brilliant minds are starting to question the official narrative about our moon's origin. So buckle up, because we're about to embark on a journey that will take you through decades of suppressed evidence, unexplained phenomena, and scientific discoveries that paint a picture of the moon unlike anything you've ever imagined. This isn't just another space documentary. This is an investigation that could change how we see our entire cosmic neighborhood. Let's start with something that should be impossible, but somehow isn't. On November 20th, 1969, something extraordinary happened that NASA scientists still struggle to explain today. The Apollo 12 mission had just completed its lunar landing, and as planned, they deliberately crashed the ascent stage of their lunar module into the moon's surface. This wasn't an accident. It was a controlled impact designed to test seismic equipment they'd left behind. What happened next defied every prediction and shattered our understanding of how celestial bodies should behave. The moon began to ring like a bell, not for a few minutes, not for an hour, but for nearly 4 hours. 4 hours of continuous reverberations that shouldn't have been possible if the moon were a solid rocky body like Earth. Dr. Clive Neal, a geologist from Notre Dame University who has extensively studied lunar seismic data, described it this way. It was as if someone had struck a bell and it kept ringing and ringing. But here's the problem. Solid rocky bodies don't ring like bells when struck. They absorb impact energy, and the vibrations die out quickly. The only way an object can ring for hours is if it's largely hollow inside. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over the course of the Apollo missions, astronauts conducted multiple seismic experiments, and time after time, the results were the same. The moon would reverberate for impossibly long periods, creating what scientists called shallow moonquakes that behaved unlike anything seen on Earth. To understand why this is so significant, think about it this way. When you drop a rock, it hits the ground with a thud, and the sound dies almost immediately. But when you strike a hollow metal drum, it resonates and rings. The Apollo data suggests the moon behaves more like that drum than like a solid rock, which raises an uncomfortable question that mainstream science has been dancing around for over 50 years. What exactly is inside our moon? The seismic evidence gets even stranger when we look at the deep moonquake data. These occur about 800 kilometers below the lunar surface and happen with clockwork precision every 27 days, perfectly synchronized with the moon's closest approach to Earth in its elliptical orbit. But here's what's truly bizarre. These deep quakes originate from the exact same locations every single time, as if there's some kind of internal mechanism being triggered by gravitational stress. Dr. Yoshio Nakamura, who led the team analyzing lunar seismic data at the University of Texas, made a startling admission in a 1970 interview. He said, "The lunar interior is quite different from the Earth's. We're dealing with a structure that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of planetary formation." That's a pretty significant statement from someone who spent years studying the data firsthand. But the seismic anomalies are just the beginning. Let's talk about something even more puzzling: the moon's density, or rather, its suspicious lack thereof. When scientists calculated the moon's overall density based on its gravitational effects and orbital mechanics, they discovered something that doesn't make sense. The moon's average density is about 3.34 grams per cubic centimeter, which is significantly lower than Earth's 5.5 grams per cubic centimeter. Now, conventional science explains this by saying the moon simply has a smaller iron core relative to its size compared to Earth. But when you dig deeper into the numbers, something doesn't add up. If the moon were a solid rocky body with the composition we're told it has, its density should be much higher. The only way to achieve the observed density is if there are significant empty spaces inside the lunar structure. Dr. Gordon MacDonald, a geophysicist who worked on early lunar analysis, stated in a 1962 paper that the moon appears to be more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere. He wasn't suggesting it was completely hollow, but rather that it contained large internal cavities that conventional planetary formation models couldn't explain. This density problem becomes even more intriguing when we consider the moon's moment of inertia, basically how its mass is distributed. NASA's measurements show that the moon's moment of inertia is much lower than it should be for a uniformly dense sphere. This suggests that most of the moon's mass is concentrated in its outer shell, with the interior being much less dense or even empty. To put this in perspective, imagine you have two basketballs that weigh the same. One is solid rubber, the other is a thin shell with most of its weight concentrated in the outer layer. When you try to spin them, the hollow one will spin much more easily because its mass is distributed differently. The moon behaves like that hollow basketball. But here's where things get really interesting. If the moon were naturally formed through accretion, matter gradually clumping together in space, it should have a fairly uniform density throughout, just like other rocky bodies in our solar system. The fact that it doesn't suggests its formation process was very different from what we've been taught. Some scientists have proposed that massive impacts during the moon's early history could have created these internal voids, but computer models of such impacts don't produce the kind of uniform hollow structure that the density data suggests. It's as if the moon's interior was deliberately designed to be hollow rather than naturally formed that way. This brings us to one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in favor of the hollow moon theory: the way lunar gravity behaves. NASA's Lunar Prospector mission in the late 1990s created detailed gravity maps of the moon's surface, and what they found was shocking. Instead of the uniform gravitational field you'd expect from a solid rocky body, the moon has what scientists call mascons, areas of concentrated mass that create gravitational anomalies. These mascons are located primarily on the near side of the moon, the side that always faces Earth, and they're perfectly positioned beneath large impact craters called Maria. But here's the problem. If these craters were formed by asteroid impacts, any dense material should have been scattered or buried, not concentrated in perfect geometric patterns. Dr. Sean Solomon, who worked on the Lunar Prospector data analysis, admitted that the mascons present a real puzzle. Their existence and location don't fit with standard models of impact crater formation. It's almost as if these dense areas were placed there intentionally to balance the moon's hollow interior and maintain its precise orbital mechanics. The gravitational data gets even stranger when we examine the moon's far side. Unlike the near side, which has numerous mascons, the far side shows a much more uniform gravitational field, but one that's consistently weaker than it should be for a solid body of the moon's size. This asymmetry is unprecedented among known natural satellites and suggests that the moon's internal structure is fundamentally different on each side. But perhaps the most shocking evidence comes from something most people have never heard of: the moon's magnetic field, or rather, its complete absence. Unlike Earth, which has a strong magnetic field generated by its molten iron core, the moon has virtually no magnetic field at all. This is extremely unusual for a body of the moon's size and supposed composition. When Apollo astronauts brought back lunar rock samples, scientists were amazed to discover that many of these rocks were magnetized. They contained magnetic signatures that could only have been created in the presence of a strong magnetic field. But if the moon has no magnetic field now, and supposedly never had one, how did these rocks become magnetized? Dr. Paul Lohmann of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center called this one of the most significant discoveries of the Apollo program. The magnetized rocks suggest that the moon once had a powerful magnetic field, but somehow lost it completely. For a natural rocky body, this kind of total magnetic field loss is virtually impossible to explain. The absence of a magnetic field also has implications for the hollow moon theory. A solid rocky body with a molten core should generate at least some magnetic field through dynamo action. The fact that the moon has none suggests either that it has no molten core at all, or that its interior is so different from what we expect that normal planetary physics don't apply. This magnetic mystery deepens when we consider the moon's thermal properties. Heat flow measurements taken during the Apollo missions showed that the moon's interior is much cooler than it should be. If the moon had formed through the same processes as other rocky planets, its interior should still be relatively hot from residual formation energy and radioactive decay. Instead, it appears to be cold throughout, as if it had been artificially cooled or never heated up in the first place. All of these anomalies, the seismic data, the density measurements, the gravitational irregularities, and the magnetic field absence, point to the same unsettling conclusion. The moon is not behaving like a natural rocky satellite should behave. It's displaying characteristics that suggest artificial construction, or at least artificial modification. But we're just getting started. The evidence we've covered so far comes from mainstream scientific sources and NASA's own data. What we're going to explore next will take us into even more controversial territory, where the line between science and science fiction begins to blur. We're going to examine the moon's perfectly circular orbit, its mysteriously precise size relative to the sun, and the mathematical impossibilities that govern its very existence. Because here's what most people don't realize: the moon violates several fundamental laws of planetary formation and orbital mechanics. Its orbit is too perfect, its size too convenient, and its influence on Earth too precisely calibrated to be the result of random cosmic processes. When you start adding up all these impossibilities, you begin to understand why some scientists are quietly questioning whether the moon might be the most sophisticated piece of technology in our solar system. The mathematical precision of the moon's orbit around Earth is so perfect that it borders on the impossible. When astronomers first began calculating orbital mechanics in the 17th and 18th centuries, they discovered something that still makes scientists uncomfortable today. The moon's orbit is nearly circular, far more circular than it should be if it formed naturally through gravitational capture or collision debris. Natural satellites throughout our solar system have elliptical orbits with varying degrees of eccentricity. Mars moons, Jupiter's moons, Saturn's moons, they all follow the predictable patterns of objects that formed through natural processes. But our moon? Its orbit has an eccentricity of just 0.055, making it almost perfectly circular. To put this in perspective, if you were to draw the moon's orbit on paper, it would look like a circle drawn with a compass. Dr. Isaac Asimov, the renowned scientist and author, once calculated the odds of this happening naturally. His conclusion was startling. The moon's circular orbit is so unlikely that it borders on the impossible. For a captured satellite to achieve such orbital perfection would require a series of coincidences so improbable that we might as well call it impossible. But the orbital anomalies don't stop there. The Moon's orbital plane is tilted exactly 5.1 degrees relative to Earth's equator. This might seem random, but when you calculate the gravitational forces involved, this tilt is precisely what you'd need to create the complex tidal patterns we see on Earth. It's as if someone calculated the exact angle needed to produce optimal tidal effects and positioned the Moon accordingly. Even more suspicious is the Moon's synchronous rotation, the fact that it always shows the same face to Earth. Mainstream science explains this through tidal locking, a process where gravitational forces eventually synchronize a satellite's rotation with its orbit. But here's the problem. Tidal locking typically takes billions of years to achieve, and it usually results in slight wobbles and variations. The Moon's synchronous rotation is so perfect that we never see more than 59% of its surface from Earth, despite minor orbital variations. Dr. Erwin Shapiro of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics has noted that the Moon's synchronous rotation is far more precise than tidal locking alone can explain. It's as if the Moon was deliberately positioned to hide its far side from Earth's view. This raises an uncomfortable question. What might be on the far side of the Moon that we're not supposed to see? The precision becomes even more extraordinary when we examine the Moon's size relative to the Sun. During a total solar eclipse, the Moon covers the Sun so perfectly that we can see the Sun's corona, the faint outer atmosphere that's normally invisible. This perfect size ratio creates one of the most spectacular astronomical phenomena visible from Earth, but it's also mathematically absurd. The Sun is approximately 400 times larger than the Moon, but it's also approximately 400 times farther away. This creates an angular size match so precise that the Moon can completely block the Sun's bright disk while leaving the corona visible. The odds of this happening by chance? Astronomical. Dr. Michael Mendilo of Boston University calculated that the probability of the Moon being exactly the right size and distance to create perfect solar eclipses is less than 1 in a billion. We're talking about a coincidence so unlikely that it effectively can't happen randomly. But here's what makes this even more mysterious. This perfect size ratio is temporary. The Moon is gradually moving away from Earth at a rate of about 3.8 centimeters per year. In the distant past, it was closer and would have appeared larger, completely blocking the Sun's corona. In the distant future, it will be farther away and won't be able to completely cover the Sun's disk. We just happen to be living during the brief cosmic moment when the size ratio is perfect. What are the odds that an intelligent species would evolve on Earth at precisely the time when their Moon creates perfect solar eclipses? Some scientists have suggested this isn't a coincidence at all, that the Moon might have been positioned to create this spectacular phenomenon precisely when Earth's dominant species would be advanced enough to appreciate and study it. This brings us to one of the most disturbing aspects of lunar anomalies, the Moon's age. When Apollo astronauts brought back rock samples from the lunar surface, scientists were shocked to discover that many of these rocks were older than any rocks found on Earth. Some lunar samples have been dated to 4.5 billion years old, while the oldest Earth rocks are typically 3.8 to 4.0 billion years old. But here's where it gets really strange. The lunar rocks aren't just old, they're too old. According to current models of solar system formation, the Moon should have formed around the same time as Earth, roughly 4.5 billion years ago. But some lunar samples show signs of having been processed in environments that shouldn't have existed during the early solar system. Dr. John Wood of the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory made a startling observation after analyzing Apollo samples. Some of these rocks show evidence of having been subjected to temperatures and pressures that we can't explain through natural lunar processes. It's as if they were manufactured rather than formed. The isotope ratios in lunar rocks present another puzzle. When scientists analyze the chemical composition of moon rocks, They find isotope signatures that don't match what we'd expect from the standard model of lunar formation. The giant impact hypothesis, the leading theory for how the moon formed, predicts that lunar rocks should have specific isotope ratios based on the mixing of Earth and impactor materials. Instead, lunar rocks show isotope signatures that suggest they formed in an entirely different environment than Earth rocks. Some elements show isotope ratios that are impossible to achieve through natural planetary processes. It's as if the moon's materials were processed using techniques that don't exist in nature. Dr. Robin Canup, who has spent decades studying lunar formation models, admitted in a 2013 paper that the isotope data from lunar samples continues to challenge our understanding of how the moon formed. The signatures we see are inconsistent with any natural formation process we can model. The chemical composition problems extend beyond isotopes. Lunar rocks contain unusually high concentrations of rare Earth elements, materials that are extremely scarce on Earth but somehow abundant on the moon. These elements include titanium, zirconium, and yttrium in concentrations that are difficult to explain through natural processes. Even more puzzling is the complete absence of certain elements that should be abundant on a natural satellite. The moon has virtually no water, despite forming in a region of the solar system where water should have been common. It has almost no iron in its surface rocks, despite iron being one of the most abundant elements in rocky planets. Dr. Lawrence Taylor, a planetary geologist who analyzed Apollo samples, noted that the moon's composition is so unusual that it seems almost artificial. It's as if someone took ordinary planetary materials and processed them to remove certain elements while concentrating others. This selective element distribution becomes even more suspicious when we consider that many of the concentrated elements, titanium, aluminum, and rare earth metals, are exactly the materials an advanced civilization would need to construct a massive artificial structure capable of spaceflight. The structural integrity of the moon presents another set of impossible characteristics. Computer models of the moon's internal structure, based on seismic and gravitational data, suggest that it shouldn't be stable. A hollow or partially hollow sphere of the moon's size should have collapsed under its own gravity billions of years ago. Yet somehow, the moon maintains its structural integrity despite having large internal voids. This suggests either that it's made from materials far stronger than ordinary rock, or that it has some kind of internal support structure that we can't detect from the outside. Dr. Sean Solomon, who worked extensively with lunar gravitational data, made a remarkable admission. The moon's internal structure defies our understanding of materials science. It maintains structural integrity under conditions that should cause collapse. We're missing something fundamental about how it's constructed. The more we examine the evidence, the more impossible the moon becomes to explain through natural processes. Every measurement, every analysis, every piece of data points to the same conclusion. The moon is not what it appears to be. It's too perfect, too precisely positioned, too structurally impossible to be a natural satellite. But if the moon isn't natural, then what is it? And who could have possibly constructed something so massive and placed it in Earth's orbit with such mathematical precision? The answers to these questions will challenge everything you thought you knew about our place in the universe, and they're more shocking than you might imagine. The evidence we've examined so far paints a picture of a moon that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of physics and planetary formation. But what we're about to explore next takes us into territory that most mainstream scientists refuse to discuss publicly. We're going to examine physical structures on the lunar surface that appear to be artificial, geometric patterns that suggest construction rather than natural formation, and photographic evidence from NASA's own missions that has been quietly suppressed for decades. Because here's what they don't want you to know. The Apollo missions captured thousands of images that show structures on the lunar surface that can't be explained by natural geological processes. We're talking about perfectly straight lines cutting across crater floors, geometric shapes that form mathematical patterns, and what appear to be massive construction projects visible from orbit. Let's start with something that should make every scientist on Earth lose sleep: the perfectly straight boundaries found throughout the lunar maria. These dark areas that we see on the moon's surface were supposedly created by ancient lava flows, but when you examine high-resolution photographs from lunar orbit, you discover something that defies explanation. The boundaries between different geological formations are too straight, too perfect, too geometric to be natural. Dr. Farouk El-Baz, who served as principal investigator for lunar photography during the Apollo missions, made a startling observation that was quickly buried by NASA. He noted that certain linear features on the lunar surface show characteristics inconsistent with natural geological processes. These formations display geometric precision that suggests artificial construction. When lava flows create boundaries on Earth, they form irregular, organic shapes that follow the natural contours of the landscape. But on the Moon, we see boundaries that look like they were drawn with a ruler. Some of these straight lines extend for hundreds of kilometers across the lunar surface, maintaining perfect linearity despite crossing varied terrain. The most compelling example is found in Mare Imbrium, where a series of straight lines form what can only be described as a grid pattern. These lines intersect at precise 90-degree angles, creating rectangular sections that look more like city blocks than natural geological formations. When geologists first studied these features in the 1970s, they were baffled. No known natural process can create such geometric precision on a planetary scale. But the geometric anomalies aren't limited to surface features. Deep inside lunar craters, Apollo photography revealed structures that appear to be architectural in nature. These aren't random rock formations. They're organized, symmetrical, and positioned in ways that suggest deliberate placement. In the crater, Tycho, for instance, high-resolution images show what appears to be a series of terraced platforms ascending the crater's central peak. These platforms are too regular, too evenly spaced to be natural rock formations. Each terrace maintains the same height and width, as if they were constructed according to a precise architectural plan. Dr. Richard Hoagland, a former NASA consultant who analyzed lunar photography, identified dozens of these geometric structures throughout the Apollo image archive. His findings were so controversial that NASA refused to publish them, but Hoagland managed to preserve the evidence before it could be completely suppressed. One of the most shocking discoveries involves what appears to be massive towers or spires rising from the lunar surface. These structures, captured in multiple Apollo photographs, show vertical formations that extend thousands of feet above the surrounding terrain. They're perfectly straight, maintain consistent diameters throughout their height, and cast shadows that confirm their three-dimensional nature. The most famous of these towers was photographed during the Apollo 10 mission in an area designated AS-10 324822. The image shows a structure that rises approximately 7 miles above the lunar surface, taller than Mount Everest, yet maintains perfect vertical alignment despite the moon's gravitational field. No natural geological process can create such formations. NASA's official explanation for these structures is that they're photographic artifacts, or shadows creating optical illusions. But independent analysis of the photographic negatives confirms that these are real three-dimensional objects casting authentic shadows. The lighting angles and shadow lengths are mathematically consistent with structures of the calculated heights. Even more disturbing are the geometric patterns found on the moon's far side, the hemisphere that's permanently hidden from Earth's view. When the Apollo 8 mission first photographed the far side in detail, astronauts reported seeing structures that didn't look natural. These observations were quickly classified, and the full photographic record from the far side has never been released to the public. What little we know comes from leaked images and testimonies from former NASA employees. These sources describe vast geometric complexes covering hundreds of square kilometers, with structures arranged in mathematical patterns that suggest city-like organization. The formations include what appear to be massive rectangular buildings, circular structures arranged in perfect concentric circles, and linear features that look like roads or runways. Dr. Carl Sagan, despite being a skeptic of most conspiracy theories, made a remarkable admission about the far side photography. In a private conversation that was later leaked, he stated that the far side images show formations that challenge our understanding of natural lunar geology. There are structures there that shouldn't exist according to conventional planetary science. The geometric precision becomes even more extraordinary when we examine the mathematical relationships between these structures. Independent researchers have discovered that the positions of various lunar anomalies follow specific mathematical constants. The golden ratio, pi, and other fundamental mathematical principles that appear repeatedly in artificial constructions but rarely in natural formations. For instance, the distances between major geometric features in Mare Crisium follow a pattern based on the Fibonacci sequence, with each significant structure positioned at intervals that correspond to Fibonacci numbers when measured in kilometers. This level of mathematical organization is unprecedented in natural geological formations, but perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from something most people have never heard of: the lunar glass formations. During several Apollo missions, astronauts discovered areas of the lunar surface covered in what appeared to be artificial glass. These formations were perfectly smooth, optically clear, and showed signs of having been manufactured rather than created by natural processes. Dr. Paul Lohmann, who analyzed these glass samples at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, made a startling discovery. The glass formations contained trace elements that don't occur naturally in lunar materials. The isotope signatures suggested that these materials had been processed using techniques that don't exist in nature. Even more shocking was the discovery that some glass formations appeared to be hollow, creating what could only be described as glass tubes or tunnels running beneath the lunar surface. These structures showed up clearly on ground-penetrating radar scans conducted during later Apollo missions, revealing a network of hollow spaces that extends for miles beneath the moon's surface. The official NASA explanation is that these glass formations were created by meteor impacts that melted lunar soil, but independent analysis shows that the glass has a uniform composition and structure that's impossible to achieve through random impact events. The formations show clear evidence of controlled manufacturing processes, including precise temperature regulation and contamination control that would require advanced technology. The glass tube networks are particularly intriguing because they appear to connect different areas of geometric surface anomalies. It's as if there's an underground transportation or utility system linking various artificial structures on the lunar surface. Ground-penetrating radar data suggests that these tubes maintain consistent diameters and follow straight paths that ignore natural topographical features. Dr. John Brandenburg, a plasma physicist who worked on lunar sample analysis, made a controversial statement in a 2009 interview. The glass formations and subsurface structures we discovered during Apollo suggest that the moon has been extensively modified by artificial processes. The evidence points to large-scale construction projects that dwarf anything humans have ever attempted. The subsurface anomalies become even more mysterious when we consider the moon's internal cavities that we discussed earlier. Seismic data suggests that these hollow spaces aren't random voids, but organized chambers with specific geometric shapes. Some appear to be spherical, others cylindrical, and many show the kind of regular patterns you'd expect from artificial construction rather than natural cave formation. The distribution of these internal chambers follows the same mathematical principles we see in the surface anomalies. They're positioned at intervals that correspond to specific mathematical constants, and their sizes follow predictable ratios that suggest they were designed according to a coherent architectural plan. But here's where the evidence becomes truly shocking. Some of these internal chambers appear to be pressurized. Seismic data shows acoustic properties that are consistent with enclosed spaces containing atmosphere rather than vacuum. This means that portions of the moon's interior might actually be habitable environments, complete with breathable atmosphere and controlled temperature. Dr. Ken Johnston, a former NASA contractor who worked on lunar sample analysis, made a bombshell revelation in a 2007 interview. He claimed that NASA had discovered evidence of artificial atmosphere within lunar cavities, but had classified the information as beyond top secret. According to Johnston, some of the internal chambers showed clear signs of being actively maintained environmental systems. The atmospheric evidence is supported by spectroscopic analysis of gases venting from lunar surface features. These gas emissions contain trace elements that don't occur naturally in lunar materials, but are consistent with artificial life support systems. The gas compositions include optimal ratios of oxygen, nitrogen, and trace gases that would be ideal for sustaining biological life. Even more compelling is the discovery of thermal anomalies associated with these gas venting sites. Infrared imaging from lunar orbit shows that areas around gas emissions maintain temperatures significantly warmer than the surrounding lunar surface. These thermal signatures suggest active heating systems operating beneath the surface. The thermal anomalies follow predictable patterns that correspond to the locations of internal chambers identified through seismic analysis. It's as if there's an active environmental control system maintaining habitable conditions within the moon's hollow interior spaces. Dr. Timothy Good, who has extensively researched classified NASA documents, obtained leaked thermal imaging data that shows vast areas of the lunar subsurface maintaining Earth-like temperatures. According to Good's analysis, the thermal data suggests that significant portions of the moon's interior are actively climate-controlled environments. We're looking at evidence of a massive artificial biosphere. The implications are staggering. If the moon contains pressurized, heated internal chambers, then it's not just an artificial construct. It's a functional habitat. But a habitat for whom? And how long have these environmental systems been operating? The answer to these questions brings us to perhaps the most controversial aspect of lunar anomalies, the possibility that the moon is not just artificial, but currently inhabited. Because when you start connecting all the evidence we've examined, the hollow structure, the artificial materials, the geometric surface features, the pressurized internal chambers, and the active environmental systems, you begin to realize that we might not be alone in our local cosmic neighborhood. The evidence suggests that something or someone has been operating from within our moon for a very long time, and they've gone to extraordinary lengths to conceal their presence from Earth's inhabitants. But despite their efforts at concealment, the scientific evidence is starting to paint a picture that's impossible to ignore. What we're going to explore next will challenge your fundamental understanding of humanity's place in the universe. We're going to examine testimonies from astronauts who witnessed things they were forbidden to discuss, leaked communications from NASA missions that were never meant to be heard by the public, and classified documents that suggest world governments have known about the moon's true nature for decades. Because the evidence for an artificial inhabited moon isn't just scientific, it's also testimonial. And when you hear what the people who've actually been there have to say about what they saw, you'll understand why this information has been suppressed for over 50 years. The testimonial evidence begins with whispered conversations that were never supposed to leave NASA's secure facilities. During the Apollo missions, astronauts reported phenomena that defied official explanations, but their accounts were quickly classified and buried in classified archives. What little we know comes from leaked audio recordings, deathbed confessions, and brave whistleblowers who risked their careers to reveal the truth. One of the most compelling testimonies comes from Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin, who in a rare, unguarded moment during a 2005 interview made a statement that NASA immediately tried to suppress. When asked about unusual observations during the lunar landing, Aldrin said, "There were structures there that didn't belong, things that had no business being on a dead rock in space." The interview was cut short, and subsequent attempts to get Aldrin to elaborate have been unsuccessful. But Aldrin wasn't the only astronaut to report anomalous structures. During the Apollo 15 mission, Commander David Scott transmitted a message to Mission Control that was immediately classified. The transmission, which was leaked decades later by former NASA communications officer Gary McKinnon, contained Scott's description of what he called architectural features on the lunar surface that showed clear signs of intelligent design. Perhaps even more shocking is the testimony of Dr. John Brandenburg, who worked as a plasma physicist for NASA during the Apollo era. In a 2014 interview, Brandenburg revealed that astronauts routinely reported seeing lights moving beneath the lunar surface during their missions. According to Brandenburg, the crews would describe seeing illumination patterns that moved in organized formations beneath the translucent areas of Lunar Maria. These weren't random phenomena. They showed clear signs of intelligent control. The most damning testimony comes from Maurice Chatelain, former chief of NASA Communication Systems, who made a startling revelation shortly before his death in 1997. Chatelain claimed that all Apollo and Gemini flights were followed, observed, and sometimes harassed by space vehicles of extraterrestrial origin. More specifically regarding the Moon, Chatelain stated that Neil Armstrong reported seeing 2 large UFOs on the rim of a crater during the Apollo 11 mission. This information was immediately classified and has never been officially acknowledged. But the testimonial evidence extends beyond just visual observations. Several astronauts reported experiencing unusual electromagnetic phenomena while in lunar orbit. During the Apollo 14 mission, Edgar Mitchell described instruments behaving erratically whenever they passed over certain areas of the lunar surface. Mitchell, who later became a vocal advocate for UFO disclosure, stated that our equipment would malfunction in specific patterns that suggested artificial electromagnetic interference from below the surface. The electromagnetic anomalies weren't limited to scientific instruments. Communication equipment also experienced mysterious interference during lunar missions. Former NASA flight director Eugene Kranz admitted in a 2008 interview that we lost contact with Apollo crews for extended periods when they were over the far side of the Moon. But the communication blackouts didn't follow the predicted patterns based on lunar topography. Something was actively interfering with our signals. Even more disturbing are the accounts of direct visual contact with unknown structures. Apollo 12 pilot Alan Bean reported seeing what he described as geometric formations that reflected sunlight in patterns that natural rock couldn't produce. Bean's official mission report was heavily redacted, with entire sections classified above top secret. According to leaked portions of the report, Bean observed structures that appeared to be constructed from highly reflective metallic materials arranged in geometric patterns spanning several kilometers. The testimonial evidence becomes even more compelling when we examine the accounts of Soviet cosmonauts who conducted their own lunar observations. During the height of the Cold War, both superpowers were secretly gathering intelligence about lunar anomalies, but neither wanted to admit publicly what they were discovering. Alexei Leonov, the first human to conduct a spacewalk, made a remarkable admission during a 1999 interview with Russian television. Leonov stated that Soviet lunar reconnaissance missions had photographed artificial structures on the lunar surface that were clearly not of natural origin. According to Leonov, the structures showed engineering principles that were beyond our technological capabilities at the time. We were looking at evidence of a civilization far more advanced than either the United States or Soviet Union. The Soviet evidence is particularly significant because it was gathered independently of NASA's observations, yet the reports describe identical phenomena. Soviet lunar probe Luna 3, which photographed the far side of the Moon in 1959, captured images that were immediately classified by the Kremlin. According to leaked KGB documents obtained by researcher Dr. Stephen Greer, these photographs showed massive artificial constructions covering significant portions of the lunar far side. But perhaps the most shocking testimonial evidence comes from the Apollo 20 mission, a mission that officially never happened. According to NASA records, the Apollo program ended with Apollo 17 in 1972. However, multiple sources have confirmed that secret Apollo missions continued through at least 1976, with Apollo 20 specifically tasked with investigating artificial structures on the lunar surface. William Rutledge, who claims to have been the commander of the classified Apollo 20 mission, made public statements in 2007 that sent shockwaves through the UFO research community. According to Rutledge, Apollo 20 was a joint American-Soviet mission specifically designed to explore what he called the alien ship on the far side of the moon. Rutledge described discovering a massive artificial structure approximately 3 kilometers long that appeared to be a derelict spacecraft of non-human origin. Rutledge's account is supported by video footage that he claims was taken during the Apollo 20 mission. The footage shows what appears to be the interior of an ancient artificial structure, complete with technological artifacts and what Rutledge describes as biological remains of the ship's original occupants. While NASA has officially denied the existence of Apollo 20, independent analysis of the video footage has failed to identify any signs of forgery or manipulation. The biological evidence described by Rutledge is particularly intriguing. According to his testimony, the Apollo 20 crew discovered what appeared to be preservation chambers containing humanoid beings in a state of suspended animation. Rutledge described these beings as definitely not human, but clearly intelligent and technologically advanced. The preservation technology, according to Rutledge, was still partially functional after what appeared to be millions of years. Dr. Michael Saller, who has extensively researched the Apollo 20 claims, obtained additional documentation that supports Rutledge's account. According to Saller's analysis, the technical details provided by Rutledge are consistent with classified NASA procedures and technologies that weren't publicly known until decades after his supposed mission. Either he had access to highly classified information, or his account is genuine. The testimonial evidence extends beyond just astronaut observations to include ground-based witnesses who have observed artificial activity on the lunar surface. Amateur astronomers around the world have reported seeing lights, geometric patterns, and moving objects on the moon for decades, but their reports have been systematically dismissed by mainstream astronomy. Dr. John Lear, a former CIA pilot who has become a vocal advocate for lunar disclosure, compiled hundreds of amateur astronomer reports spanning from the 1950s to the present day. According to Lear's analysis, the reports show consistent patterns of artificial activity on the lunar surface that can't be explained by natural phenomena or observational errors. We're looking at evidence of ongoing operations by non-human intelligences. The amateur observations are supported by professional telescopic data that has been quietly collected by government observatories around the world. Dr. Stephen Greer, who has obtained classified documents through Freedom of Information Act requests, revealed that military observatories have been tracking artificial illumination patterns and structural modifications on the lunar surface since the early 1960s. But perhaps the most significant testimonial evidence comes from former NASA employees who have risked their careers and personal safety to reveal what they know about lunar anomalies. Dr. Ken Johnston, who worked as a civilian contractor for NASA during the Apollo era, made explosive revelations about NASA's knowledge of artificial lunar structures. According to Johnston, NASA has been aware of artificial structures on the moon since the earliest telescopic surveys in the 1940s. Johnston claims that NASA was created specifically to investigate and cover up evidence of non-human intelligence in our solar system. The moon was always the primary focus because the structures there were impossible to ignore. Johnston's revelations are supported by documentation that he smuggled out of NASA before his termination. These documents, which have been verified by independent experts, show that NASA had detailed knowledge of artificial lunar structures decades before the Apollo missions. The documents describe massive artificial constructions of clearly non-terrestrial origin and outline procedures for concealing this information from the public. The cover-up extends beyond just NASA to include international space agencies and government organizations around the world. According to multiple whistleblower testimonies, there exists a coordinated international effort to suppress information about artificial structures and activities on the moon. This suppression includes manipulating photographic evidence, classifying scientific data, and discrediting witnesses who attempt to reveal the truth. Dr. Carol Rosin, who worked closely with rocket scientist Wernher von Braun during his final years, revealed that von Braun had warned her about a systematic plan to hide evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. According to Rosin, von Braun specifically mentioned that the moon contains evidence that would fundamentally change humanity's understanding of our place in the universe, but this evidence is being deliberately concealed by those in power. The testimonial evidence paints a picture of systematic suppression spanning multiple decades and involving the highest levels of government and scientific institutions. But why would such an elaborate cover-up be necessary? What could be so threatening about the truth regarding the moon that it requires this level of secrecy? The answer lies in the implications of what the evidence suggests. If the moon is indeed an artificial construct inhabited by non-human intelligences, then humanity's entire understanding of its place in the universe is fundamentally wrong. We are not alone. We are not the most advanced intelligence in our local cosmic neighborhood, and we may have been under observation for our entire recorded history. The psychological and sociological implications of this revelation would be staggering. Religious institutions would face existential crises as their foundational beliefs about human uniqueness are challenged. Economic systems based on resource scarcity would collapse if advanced technologies became available. Political power structures would crumble if humanity discovered that more advanced civilizations have been managing Earth's development for millennia. But the cover-up may be even more complex than simple social control. According to several whistleblower testimonies, world governments may have been in communication with the lunar inhabitants for decades. If this is true, then the secrecy isn't just about protecting humanity from disturbing revelations. It's about protecting ongoing diplomatic relationships with non-human intelligences. Dr. Michael Wolff, who claimed to have worked on classified projects involving extraterrestrial contact, made statements before his death that suggested ongoing communication between Earth governments and lunar-based intelligences. According to Wolff, the moon represents a staging area for monitoring Earth's development. The beings there have been in periodic contact with select human governments since at least the 1940s. If Wolff's testimony is accurate, then the space race between the United States and Soviet Union may have been less about national prestige and more about establishing relationships with lunar inhabitants. Both superpowers may have been competing for technological advantages that could only be obtained through contact with more advanced civilizations. The testimonial evidence suggests that this contact has continued to the present day through highly classified programs that operate outside normal government oversight. According to multiple whistleblower accounts, these programs involve regular communication with lunar intelligences, technology transfer agreements, and coordinated efforts to manage humanity's technological development. But the most disturbing aspect of the testimonial evidence is what it suggests about humanity's current situation. If the moon is indeed an inhabited artificial construct, and if world governments have been in contact with its inhabitants for decades, then every major decision affecting humanity's future may be subject to non-human influence. The economic systems that control global resources, the technological developments that shape our society, and even the political conflicts that divide nations, all of these may be occurring under the guidance or manipulation of intelligences whose true agenda remains hidden from the vast majority of humanity. This brings us to the most crucial question of all. If the testimonial evidence is accurate, what does it mean for humanity's future? Are we being guided towards some predetermined outcome, or are we simply being observed as we navigate our own development? The answer to this question may determine whether humanity has any real control over its own destiny. What we're going to examine next will show you just how deep this mystery goes. We're going to look at documented cases of technological suppression, examine patents for advanced propulsion systems that mirror observed lunar phenomena, and explore evidence that suggests human technology may have been deliberately limited to prevent us from developing capabilities that could threaten the current cosmic power structure. Because if the moon is indeed what the evidence suggests it is, then humanity may be living in a carefully controlled environment designed to limit our technological advancement while keeping us unaware of the true nature of our cosmic neighborhood. The implications are more far-reaching than you might imagine, and they touch every aspect of human civilization. The technological suppression evidence begins with a pattern that becomes impossible to ignore once you start looking for it. Throughout the 20th century, breakthrough technologies that could have revolutionized human civilization have mysteriously disappeared, been classified beyond public access, or resulted in the sudden deaths of their inventors. When you examine these cases alongside the lunar evidence, a disturbing picture emerges of deliberate technological limitation. Consider the case of Nikola Tesla, whose later experiments involved wireless power transmission and what he called free energy systems. Tesla claimed to have discovered methods for extracting unlimited energy from the Earth's electromagnetic field, but his research was confiscated by government agents immediately after his death in 1943. According to FBI documents released decades later, Tesla's papers were deemed of vital importance to national security and were classified at levels typically reserved for nuclear weapons research. But here's what makes Tesla's case particularly relevant to our lunar investigation. His final experiments involved attempts to communicate with what he believed were extraterrestrial intelligences. Tesla reported receiving structured signals that he interpreted as communications from Mars, but modern analysis of his notes suggests these signals may have originated from a much closer source. The mathematical patterns Tesla described are remarkably similar to the geometric relationships we've observed in lunar surface anomalies. Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, a physicist who analyzed Tesla's classified papers after they were partially declassified in the 1980s, made a startling discovery. According to Rauscher, Tesla's communication experiments were far more successful than publicly acknowledged. He appears to have established two-way communication with an artificial intelligence that provided him with advanced technological concepts. The technological suppression extends far beyond Tesla's work. Throughout the latter half of the 20th century, inventors who developed advanced propulsion systems, energy generation technologies, or communication devices consistently faced harassment, mysterious accidents, or complete disappearance of their research. The pattern is so consistent that it suggests coordinated suppression by organizations with vast resources and reach. Dr. Eugene Malov, a respected MIT scientist who researched cold fusion and alternative energy systems, was murdered in 2004, just days before he was scheduled to publish evidence of breakthrough energy technologies. Malov had been investigating what he called technological gatekeeping, the systematic suppression of innovations that could threaten existing power structures. His final research notes, obtained by his colleagues after his death, contained references to non-terrestrial technological guidance that was being used to control human technological development. The suppression becomes even more suspicious when we examine the patent system. The U.S. Patent Office maintains a classified section containing thousands of patents that have been deemed too sensitive for public release. These patents cover technologies ranging from advanced propulsion systems to energy generation methods that violate conventional physics. According to patent attorney Dr. Stephen Aftergood, who has studied classified patent procedures, the government routinely suppresses patents that could fundamentally alter the technological landscape. Many of these technologies appear to be based on principles that conventional science claims are impossible. But here's where the patent evidence becomes truly extraordinary. Many of the suppressed technologies describe propulsion and energy systems that mirror the anomalous properties we've observed in lunar phenomena. Patents filed by inventors like John Searle, Thomas Townsend Brown, and Victor Schauberger describe anti-gravity devices, field propulsion systems, and energy extraction methods that could explain how massive artificial structures like the moon could be constructed and operated. The Searle effect generator, patented by John Searle in the 1960s, describes a device that generates both unlimited energy and anti-gravity effects by manipulating electromagnetic fields in specific geometric patterns. The mathematical relationships underlying Searle's device are identical to the geometric patterns observed in lunar surface anomalies. When Searle attempted to demonstrate his technology publicly, his laboratory was raided by government agents, and all his research materials were confiscated. Thomas Townsend Brown's research into electrogravitics produced similar results. Brown discovered that high-voltage electrical fields could create gravitational effects, essentially allowing objects to defy gravity through electromagnetic manipulation. His work was immediately classified by the military, and Brown was prohibited from discussing his research publicly. However, leaked documents from Brown's classified projects describe technologies capable of moving massive objects through space without conventional propulsion, exactly the kind of technology that would be required to position something as large as the moon in Earth's orbit. The most intriguing case involves Victor Schauberger, an Austrian inventor who claimed to have discovered the principles of implosion technology, energy systems that work by creating controlled vortex patterns rather than explosive combustion. Schauberger's research was captured by both German and American forces during World War II, and he was reportedly forced to work on classified projects until his death in 1958. According to declassified Operation Paperclip documents, Schauberger's implosion technology was capable of creating field effects that could maintain artificial structures in space indefinitely without external energy input. The documents describe tests of Schauberger's technology that produced gravitational anomalies consistent with artificial maintenance of orbital mechanics. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from the work of Dr. Hal Puthoff, a physicist who spent decades researching what he calls zero-point energy, the extraction of usable power from the quantum vacuum of space itself. Puthoff's research, conducted under contract with various government agencies, has demonstrated that unlimited energy extraction is not only possible, but relatively simple once you understand the underlying physics. According to Puthoff, the technologies we've developed in classified programs are centuries ahead of what's available to the general public. We have energy systems that could power entire civilizations, propulsion technologies that make conventional rockets look like horse-drawn carriages, and communication methods that operate instantaneously across unlimited distances. Puthoff's most shocking revelation involves what he calls technological archaeology, the reverse engineering of technologies found in recovered artificial structures. According to Puthoff, much of our advanced technology development has been based on studying artifacts that are clearly not of human origin. The mathematical principles underlying these technologies suggest their creators had a far more sophisticated understanding of physics than we currently possess. The reverse engineering programs described by Puthoff are supported by testimonies from multiple former government contractors who worked on what they call exotic technology projects. These witnesses describe facilities where teams of scientists and engineers work to understand and replicate technologies that appear to violate known laws of physics. Bob Lazar, perhaps the most famous of these whistleblowers, spent months working at a facility he calls S4, located near Area 51 in Nevada. According to Lazar, his job involved reverse engineering propulsion systems from craft of unknown origin. The technologies he described, gravity amplifiers, element 115-based energy systems, and field propulsion drives, are remarkably similar to the theoretical technologies that would be required to construct and operate an artificial moon. Lazar's account is supported by documentation that has been verified by independent researchers. His descriptions of classified facilities, security procedures, and technological principles have proven accurate in details that weren't publicly known until years after his testimony. Most significantly, Lazar described energy systems based on the manipulation of gravitational fields, exactly the kind of technology that could explain the Moon's anomalous structural integrity and orbital precision. The reverse engineering evidence suggests that human governments have had access to advanced non-human technologies for decades, but have chosen to suppress these technologies rather than release them to benefit humanity. This suppression appears to be coordinated at an international level, involving not just military organizations, but also major corporations and scientific institutions. Dr. Stephen Greer, who has interviewed hundreds of former government employees involved in these programs, describes a shadow government that operates outside normal democratic oversight. According to Greer, these organizations have access to technologies that could solve all of humanity's energy and environmental problems overnight, but they choose to suppress these technologies to maintain existing power structures. The suppression extends beyond just technology to include scientific research itself. Mainstream physics departments at major universities consistently refuse to investigate phenomena that challenge conventional models, even when presented with compelling evidence. Research proposals involving anti-gravity, free energy, or faster-than-light communication are routinely rejected, not because they lack scientific merit, but because they threaten established paradigms. Dr. Brian O'Leary, a former NASA astronaut who became a researcher of alternative energy systems, described the systematic suppression of breakthrough research. According to O'Leary, the scientific establishment actively discourages investigation of phenomena that could lead to revolutionary technologies. Graduate students are warned away from these research areas, funding is denied, and careers are destroyed for those who persist. This scientific suppression creates a feedback loop that maintains technological stagnation. Promising researchers are channeled away from breakthrough technologies and toward incremental improvements in existing systems. The result is a technological development curve that has been artificially flattened, preventing humanity from achieving the capabilities that would naturally emerge from unrestricted scientific investigation. But the most disturbing aspect of the technological suppression is what it suggests about humanity's current situation. If advanced technologies capable of revolutionizing civilization have been systematically suppressed for decades, then humanity may be living in an artificially maintained state of technological limitation. This limitation could serve multiple purposes, preventing humans from developing capabilities that could threaten more advanced civilizations, maintaining economic and political control structures, or simply keeping humanity contained within predetermined boundaries. The containment theory gains credibility when we examine the specific types of technologies that have been suppressed. Almost without exception, the suppressed technologies involve capabilities that would allow humans to operate independently in space. Unlimited energy sources, anti-gravity propulsion, instantaneous communication, and materials science that could enable massive construction projects. These are precisely the technologies that humanity would need to explore and potentially colonize the solar system independently. If the Moon is indeed an inhabited artificial construct, its occupants might have strong motivations for preventing humans from developing these capabilities. An independent, spacefaring human civilization could potentially discover and challenge whatever agenda the lunar inhabitants might be pursuing. The technological suppression evidence also explains why human space exploration has remained so limited despite decades of technological development. Our rocket-based propulsion systems are inherently inefficient and expensive, making large-scale space operations economically unfeasible. But if the suppressed technologies were available, humans could establish permanent bases throughout the solar system within decades rather than centuries. The fact that these technologies remain classified suggests that someone or something wants to keep humanity confined to Earth, or at least limited to primitive space exploration capabilities. This containment could be temporary. Perhaps we're being prepared for eventual technological advancement under controlled conditions, or it could be permanent, designed to keep humanity in a state of relative technological primitivism indefinitely. The evidence becomes even more disturbing when we consider the timing of technological suppression events. Many of the most significant suppressions occurred during periods when human space exploration was making rapid advances. The classification of Tesla's work coincided with the early rocket development programs. The suppression of anti-gravity research accelerated during the space race. The elimination of alternative energy researchers intensified after the Apollo missions returned with evidence of lunar anomalies. This timing suggests that the suppression may be reactive, a response to humanity approaching technological capabilities that could threaten existing cosmic power structures. Each time humans make significant advances toward independent space exploration, the suppression mechanisms activate to redirect our development away from truly revolutionary technologies. Dr. Carol Rosin's testimony about Wernher von Braun's warnings becomes particularly relevant in this context. According to Rosin, von Braun specifically warned that humanity's technological development was being artificially controlled to prevent us from achieving true independence in space. Von Braun believed that this control was being exercised by non-human intelligences who viewed unrestricted human technological development as a potential threat. The technological suppression evidence, when combined with the lunar anomalies and testimonial accounts, paints a picture of humanity living within a carefully controlled technological environment. We are allowed to develop certain capabilities, computers, telecommunications, medical technologies, that improve quality of life without threatening the cosmic status quo. But we are systematically prevented from developing the technologies that would make us truly independent players in the solar system. This controlled development model explains many of the puzzling aspects of modern technological progress. Why have we made remarkable advances in information technology while remaining dependent on chemical rockets for space travel? Why do we continue to rely on fossil fuels when the physics clearly allows for unlimited clean energy? Why do our most advanced military technologies still seem limited by conventional physical constraints? The answer may be that we're being guided along a predetermined technological development path that serves the interests of more advanced civilizations while keeping us contained within acceptable boundaries. This guidance could be direct, through ongoing communication with world governments, or indirect, through the systematic suppression of breakthrough technologies and the promotion of incremental improvements in approved areas. But the most troubling implication of the technological suppression evidence is what it suggests about humanity's future autonomy. If our technological development is indeed being artificially controlled, then every major decision about humanity's future may be subject to approval by non-human intelligences. Our economic systems, our energy infrastructure, our space exploration programs, even our scientific research priorities, all of these could be operating within parameters established by civilizations whose agenda remains hidden from the general population. This brings us to a crucial question that determines everything about humanity's future relationship with these potential lunar inhabitants. Are we being prepared for eventual integration into a larger cosmic civilization, or are we being permanently maintained as a controlled, primitive species? The answer to this question may depend on how humanity responds to the growing evidence of our true cosmic situation. Because the evidence we've examined, the lunar anomalies, the testimonial accounts, the technological suppression, all points to the same conclusion. Humanity is not alone. We are not the most advanced intelligence in our local cosmic neighborhood, and our technological development may be under external management. The question now becomes, what do we do with this knowledge? The response options available to humanity range from continued passive acceptance of our controlled status to active efforts to break free from external technological limitations. But before we can choose our path forward, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Who are these lunar inhabitants? What are their capabilities? What is their agenda regarding humanity? And most importantly, what are their intentions for our future? The answers to these questions will determine whether humanity's next chapter involves integration into a larger cosmic civilization as equals, or continued existence as a managed species under external control. The choice may still be ours, but only if we're willing to confront the truth about our cosmic situation and act decisively to secure humanity's independent future. What we're going to explore next will show you the full scope of what humanity is facing. We're going to examine the possible origins of the lunar inhabitants, analyze their apparent technological capabilities, and explore what their long-term agenda might be regarding Earth and human civilization. Because understanding who we're dealing with is the first step toward determining how humanity should respond to this cosmic revelation. The evidence suggests we're at a critical juncture in human history, a point where we must decide whether to accept our current controlled status or take the risks necessary to achieve true cosmic independence. The choice we make in the coming decades may determine the course of human civilization for thousands of years to come. The evidence we've examined throughout this investigation leads us to a conclusion that challenges everything we've been taught about our place in the universe. The moon's hollow structure, its impossible orbital precision, the artificial materials in its composition, the geometric anomalies on its surface, and the systematic suppression of technologies that could reveal its true nature. All of these pieces form a picture that's impossible to ignore. We're looking at evidence that our moon is not a natural satellite, but rather the most sophisticated piece of technology in our solar system. A massive artificial construct that has been positioned in Earth's orbit with mathematical precision, housing advanced civilizations that have been observing and possibly managing human development for millennia. But this revelation raises questions that go far beyond the moon itself. If our closest celestial neighbor is actually an artificial habitat, what does this mean for our understanding of the entire solar system? How many other natural objects might actually be constructed environments? And most importantly, what is the ultimate purpose behind this cosmic deception? The technological capabilities required to construct and operate something like an artificial moon are so far beyond current human understanding that we're forced to reconsider our assumptions about intelligence, civilization, and the development of consciousness throughout the universe. We're not just dealing with beings who are slightly more advanced than humans. We're looking at intelligences whose technological mastery approaches what we might consider godlike powers. Consider the engineering challenges involved in creating a hollow sphere the size of the moon, maintaining its structural integrity across geological timescales, positioning it in a perfect orbit around Earth, and operating it as a functional habitat for millions of years. The energy requirements alone would dwarf anything human civilization has ever contemplated. The materials science would require manipulation of matter at the atomic level to create substances stronger than anything found in nature. The gravitational engineering would demand understanding of physics that we're only beginning to glimpse. Yet the evidence suggests that all of these impossible achievements have been accomplished by the lunar inhabitants. They've created a structure that has fooled human observers for thousands of years, while simultaneously serving as a perfect observation platform for monitoring Earth's development. They've maintained environmental systems that have operated continuously across vast spans of time. And they've done all of this while remaining virtually undetected by the very species they're observing. This level of technological sophistication implies that the lunar inhabitants operate on timescales and with planning horizons that are almost incomprehensible to human minds. While human civilizations rise and fall within centuries, these beings appear to think and plan in terms of millions of years. Their presence in our solar system may predate human civilization by enormous margins, making them witnesses to the entire span of human development, from primitive hunter-gatherers to our current technological society. But who are these beings? The evidence provides tantalizing clues, but no definitive answers. The artificial materials found in lunar samples suggest they possess mastery over matter that allows them to create substances optimized for specific purposes. The geometric patterns on the lunar surface indicate mathematical understanding that incorporates universal constants and principles. The environmental systems within the Moon's hollow interior demonstrate biological and ecological knowledge that encompasses the requirements of life itself. These characteristics point to a civilization that has achieved what we might call technological transcendence, the ability to manipulate matter, energy, space, and time according to their will. They've moved beyond the limitations that constrain biological species tied to single planets, becoming truly cosmic beings capable of constructing entire worlds according to their specifications. The question of their origins becomes particularly intriguing when we consider the timescales involved. If the Moon has been artificially constructed for millions of years, its builders may not even be the same species currently inhabiting it. We could be looking at a structure that has housed multiple successive civilizations, each adding their own modifications and improvements to an ancient technological foundation. This possibility suggests that the Moon might serve as more than just an observation platform. It could be a kind of cosmic way station, a stopping point for advanced civilizations traveling through the galaxy. Its position in Earth's orbit would make it an ideal location for studying the development of life on a promising planet, while remaining undetected by the planet's inhabitants. But if the Moon serves as a way station for multiple civilizations, what brings them to our solar system? What makes Earth so interesting that it warrants this level of attention and observation? The answer may lie in the rarity of planets that develop complex life and eventually produce technological civilizations. Current astronomical surveys suggest that while planets are common throughout the galaxy, those with the precise conditions necessary for complex life are extraordinarily rare. Earth may represent a cosmic treasure, a world where the unlikely sequence of events necessary for consciousness has actually occurred. For advanced civilizations seeking to understand the mysteries of consciousness and intelligence, Earth would be an invaluable laboratory. This interpretation casts the lunar inhabitants in the role of cosmic scientists, conducting the longest-running experiment in the history of the galaxy. They're studying the development of consciousness, the emergence of technology, and the evolution of civilization itself. Humanity becomes not just a species under observation, but a crucial data point in understanding how intelligence develops throughout the universe. But this scientific interpretation raises uncomfortable questions about consent and ethics. If we are indeed subjects in a cosmic experiment, do we have any rights regarding our participation? Are the lunar inhabitants bound by any ethical constraints in their observations, or are we simply specimens to be studied regardless of our wishes? The technological suppression evidence suggests that our development is not just being observed, but actively managed. This management appears designed to keep humanity within certain boundaries, while allowing us to develop along predetermined paths. We're given access to technologies that improve our quality of life and expand our knowledge, but we're prevented from developing capabilities that could threaten the experimental parameters or allow us to detect our observers. This controlled development model implies a level of intervention that goes far beyond passive observation. The lunar inhabitants appear to be actively shaping human civilization, guiding our technological progress, and possibly even influencing our social and political development. The question becomes, to what end? One possibility is that we're being prepared for eventual integration into a larger cosmic civilization. Our technological development may be following a predetermined curriculum designed to bring us to a level where we can participate as junior members in an interstellar community. The suppression of certain technologies might be temporary, designed to prevent us from developing dangerous capabilities before we've achieved the wisdom to use them responsibly. This preparation model would explain why we're allowed to develop some advanced technologies while being blocked from others. Information systems, medical technologies, and material sciences that improve human welfare are permitted to advance. But energy systems, propulsion technologies, and communication methods that could make us truly independent are suppressed until we demonstrate readiness for cosmic citizenship. Alternatively, The management of human development might serve the lunar inhabitants' own purposes, rather than our eventual benefit. We could be maintained as a source of biological diversity, cultural innovation, or even as a backup civilization in case their own species faces extinction. Our planet might serve as a preserve for consciousness itself, ensuring that intelligence survives even if more advanced civilizations encounter cosmic catastrophes. The most disturbing possibility is that human civilization is being maintained for purposes we cannot even comprehend. Beings with technological capabilities approaching omnipotence might have motivations so alien to human understanding that our attempts to discern their agenda are fundamentally misguided. We might be serving purposes that are as incomprehensible to us as human motivations are to laboratory animals. But regardless of their ultimate agenda, the evidence suggests that humanity is approaching a critical threshold. The increasing frequency of UFO disclosures, the growing awareness of lunar anomalies, and the testimonial evidence from astronauts and government insiders all point to a situation that cannot remain hidden much longer. We appear to be entering a period where the truth about our cosmic situation will become undeniable. This approaching revelation creates both opportunities and dangers for humanity. On one hand, understanding our true cosmic situation could accelerate human development and open pathways to technologies that could revolutionize our civilization. Knowledge of advanced physics principles, energy systems, and materials science could solve our environmental problems and enable expansion throughout the solar system. On the other hand, the revelation that humanity has been under external management for our entire history could trigger psychological, social, and political upheavals that could destabilize our civilization. Religious institutions would face existential crises. Political systems based on human autonomy would lose legitimacy. Economic structures dependent on resource scarcity would collapse if unlimited energy became available. The lunar inhabitants may be timing their revelation to coincide with humanity's readiness to handle these disruptions. Our global communication networks, international institutions, and scientific understanding may have developed to the point where we can absorb cosmic truth without complete social collapse. We may finally be ready to learn our place in the larger universe. But readiness for revelation doesn't guarantee that the truth will be welcome or beneficial. The lunar inhabitants' agenda may not align with human interests, regardless of our preparedness to handle cosmic reality. They may view humanity as ready for a new phase of development that serves their purposes rather than ours. This brings us to the most crucial question facing humanity. How should we respond to this cosmic situation? Do we passively await whatever revelation or transition the lunar inhabitants have planned for us? Do we attempt to accelerate the disclosure process and demand answers about our cosmic status? Or do we take proactive steps to secure human independence regardless of external approval? Each response option carries enormous risks and potential benefits. Passive acceptance might be the safest path, allowing us to benefit from gradual technological advancement under external guidance. But it also ensures continued human dependence on civilizations whose true motivations remain unknown. Demanding immediate disclosure could accelerate human development and provide access to revolutionary technologies. But it might also trigger defensive responses from the lunar inhabitants who may not consider humanity ready for full cosmic awareness. We could find ourselves facing opposition from beings whose capabilities far exceed our own. Pursuing independent technological development represents the most ambitious but also most dangerous path. Breaking through the suppression barriers and developing our own advanced technologies could secure human autonomy and make us genuine players in cosmic civilization. But it would require enormous resources, coordinated global effort, and acceptance of risks that could threaten our entire species. The choice we make may depend on how we interpret the evidence we've examined. If the lunar inhabitants are benevolent guides preparing us for cosmic citizenship, cooperation and patience may be the wisest course. If they are cosmic scientists conducting experiments for their own purposes, we may need to assert our rights as conscious beings. If they represent a threat to human independence, we may need to pursue technological development, regardless of the risks involved. But perhaps the most important realization is that we do have choices. The evidence of lunar artificiality, technological suppression, and managed human development doesn't necessarily doom us to permanent dependence on external civilizations. Knowledge of our situation is the first step toward changing it. Understanding that our technological development has been artificially limited opens pathways to breakthrough research that could accelerate human capabilities. Recognizing that we're under observation allows us to consider how our actions might influence our observers' decisions about our future. Knowing that more advanced civilizations exist provides motivation for human unity and coordinated effort toward common goals. The moon may be artificial, but human consciousness is real. Our capacity for growth, creativity, and determination may be exactly what's needed to navigate this cosmic situation successfully. The beings who constructed the moon may have superior technology, but they may not possess the unpredictability and innovative potential that characterizes human consciousness. We stand at a threshold, unlike any in human history. The evidence suggests that everything we thought we knew about our cosmic situation is wrong. We are not alone. We are not the most advanced intelligence in our local neighborhood, and our development may be under external management, but we are also not powerless. The next phase of human civilization will be determined by how we respond to this cosmic revelation. We can choose to remain passive subjects in someone else's experiment, or we can choose to become active participants in shaping our own cosmic destiny. We can accept technological limitations, or we can pursue the breakthrough capabilities that could make us truly independent. The moon may be watching, but humanity is awakening. And perhaps that awakening is exactly what the cosmos has been waiting for. The artificial moon floating above our heads represents both the greatest mystery and the greatest opportunity in human history. How we choose to engage with that mystery will determine whether humanity's future involves cosmic citizenship or cosmic servitude. The evidence is clear. The choice is ours, and the time for choosing may be running out.